Rangers fans, welcome to Liberty Blue, the essential New York Rangers podcast. I'm Andrew Chonley alongside Nick Zararis. And Nick, the Rangers had one job, and you know what? They did it pretty well. A sweep of the Washington Capitals. They are on to round number 2.
They trailed in this series for a grand total of 3 minutes and 21 seconds. That's about as decisive a series victory as you can possibly have. I think Washington was both A, just kind of happy to be here, and then B, as the series developed, you really saw the talent disparity and Washington's inability to play with any semblance of discipline to try and make up for that talent disparity was their undoing. Washington wasn't ready for this moment. Washington looked extremely disorganized, and that's not to take away. They played reasonably well last night. There's a world where they end up winning game 4, and this is at least one more game. But big picture, talking about the series as a whole, I never really felt a particular level of concern. Like, my biggest concern at points in this series was, is someone on Washington going to do something stupid and injure someone important? That was a large stretch of my concern. Like last night when Jensen stuck his leg out, and that was totally uncalled for, unnecessary. You never want to see knee on knee, but especially considering you got beat, and to stick your knee out knowing you're about to go knee on knee with somebody, just totally unnecessary. And for a minute there, I really was worried when I saw Fox on his back holding his leg and thought, well, fuck, there goes the playoff run, because the Capitals had to be piss babies about this. But on top of that, let's do this now and get this out of the way. We'll do Wilson and Rempe now and get it over with, because these are the big talking points that the national media have decided. Number one, on Tom Wilson. He's had a solid NHL career. People forget he got called up as an 18-year-old playing on the fourth line, felt he had to goon it up to stick around, and then developed into a reasonably decent hockey player. His total inability to act like an adult in any real capacity is genuinely embarrassing.
Yeah.
You know, when your reaction to something not going your way is to immediately start trying to stir up a fight like a kindergartner who doesn't have the toy they want to play with in class, it's ridiculous. If you have a problem with the Rangers scoring a goal, be better. Do not concede a goal. If you want to go and fight somebody after the Rangers score a goal, you wait till the face-off, like we've all agreed that we're supposed to for 100 years of hockey. Not go up to somebody in Adam Fox who doesn't fight, grab them from behind while the rest of the team is celebrating behind the net, and then try and engage with somebody who's smaller than you in a game your team is losing. I've gotten on Trouba about this forever, that he only chooses to get physical and do imposing things when the game's already out of hand. Tom Wilson only does this bullshit when the Capitals are going to win or when the Capitals are going to lose, because he needs to feel important. He needs to feel like he is contributing to the game in some discernible way. And because his hockey skills are not at a level commensurate with impacting the game, he has to do shit like this. And then on Rempe, I think the Rangers are going to eventually get to a point where they're reaping what they sow. I am not saying that I don't think Rempe should come out. He's not going to come out unless he gives them a reason to take him out. I think there will eventually come a point where he's going to get his comeuppance. And I know a lot of people say, well, don't you want to see him succeed? Blah, blah, blah. Yes, I do. I would like to see him be an impactful hockey player. But when you consistently play on that line and you injure people, even if it's not a dirty hit, you begin to gain a reputation. We Ranger fans are fiercely tribal. We find it amusing that everybody dislikes him. The Rangers are getting, I'm not going to say they are getting a reputation as a dirty or a dangerous team, but that perception is out there amongst people of other fan bases. That perception is out there amongst other people in the league, within the hockey media as well. So with that in mind, the Rangers need to understand the moment. And I'll give him credit. He didn't take the bait. More than one occasion, McElrath and Wilson tried to get him to go to get the Washington back in the series. He had the common sense to stay away from that. There's going to come a time where he is going to throw that type of hit. It might be in the next round. It could be in a conference final. It might be in a cup final, where it's 100% interference. Whether or not it's a hit to the head, whatever, it's 100% interference. The puck is gone. It's not within reach of the defenseman. You can't throw that hit. You're getting 2 minutes for that. At a certain point, you get a reputation, and you can't control what other people think about you. Now, Rempe is so young, and I'll say immature, naive, that he doesn't particularly care about that. But he's going to mess with the wrong person at some point, and something bad is going to happen, and it's really unfortunate, because I would like the kid to play hockey, because when he plays hockey, he's reasonably impactful. He has enough upside that he doesn't need to resort to this chicanery to be effective. You know, you're better than Tom Wilson. You don't have to stoop to his level by engaging in that bullshit because you can actually impact the game. And you only play 6-7 minutes a game and you have that much of an impact. Imagine how much more impactful he could be if he reined it in even a little bit more and focused on using his enormous frame to clear out that net front, to screen the goalie, to make the other team's life more difficult. There was one sequence in the third period last night where the fourth line, had the puck in the offensive zone, and McElrath could not move him. Rempe was firmly in front of the net, and McElrath was cross-checking as hard as he possibly could into Rempe's lower back, and he couldn't move him in the slightest bit. If Rempe sticks to that, as opposed to throwing the hits, which people forget the whole point of a hit is to win the puck. It's great if you throw a hit and you get a little energy out of it, but if you're throwing a hit and the puck's not there, there's no point in throwing the hit. So that's my Rempe and Wilson piece. The Rangers are I won't say they're fortunate they played a team as bad as Washington, and we're going to dive in deeper than that, but they are very lucky that Rempe throwing the hits he did in this series did not lead to anything worse. I'm not saying you don't play physically, but if you're playing Carolina, if you're playing the Islanders, those teams like that shit. And they're a lot better than the Capitals are. So if you want to go down that road of trying to muck it up, be ugly, and really annoy the other team, by the end of the series against Carolina, there will be people in the hospital if they try and play that way with Carolina.
I think the most telling thing about the whole Rempe situation is that 2-2 third period of game 4, Matt Rempe does not see the ice.
Yeah.
He was benched the entire period. He was not out there. He wasn't close to going out there. I think they were double shifting Panarin. They were trying a whole bunch of different methodologies, but the one thing that they weren't doing is putting Matt Rempe on the ice. And that is that's a really telling, way of really highlighting how little the coaching staff trusts him. And I'm of the opinion, and who knows if this will actually happen, obviously, but I'm of the opinion that Hedl is going to come back in round 2 and he's going to take Rempe's spot, and Rempe is going to come out of the lineup because, we talked about this with Stu Bickle, where you can't play a forward 3 minutes a game and rotate 9 forwards and expect to win hockey games when you need to win them, in the most crucial times of the season, the playoffs. You just can't do it. You have to roll all 4 lines. You have to trust, at least to a certain extent, everybody on your roster to be able to do their jobs well. If Peter Laviolette is not trusting Matt Rempe when the series leads 3-0, the Rangers aren't even down. They're tied. It's a 2-2 hockey game. And he still sat Matt Rempe for the entire period. It really highlights how little they actually trust him to be out there, and really they're hoping for Hedl. That's the long play here. And again, it is insanity that I'm talking about Filip Hedl, considering they ruled him out for the entire season. The fact that Hedl is fully medically cleared, practicing with the team, traveling with the team, can essentially go at any point in time is a miracle, and that's putting it lightly. This is not something that should have been not even remotely close to happening. But here we are. Filip Hedl could come back for game 1 of round 2. Who knows? But so, they don't trust Matt Rempe at all. Tom Wilson's a piss baby. And I tweeted this out. You said it. It's true. My dude is so mad when the game is either already over or not close or what have you, and then he starts throwing the punches to the back of people's heads or the cross checks or we start trying to fight people. Dude, I don't know where you think you are, but you're on the ice.
You are a 30-year-old man
trying to win a hockey game. Dude, your team is down in the series. You know what your team needs? Goals. You know what your team needs? Assists. They don't need you fighting everybody on the team and sitting in the box for the entire game. They don't need that. You're over 30, bro. What is happening? It's crazy that, and again, I'm not here to defend Matt Rempe's every play. There's some plays that he makes that, you can't make, and they're a little either on the edge or over the edge. If you want to argue that, by all means, I'm not here to defend Matt Rempe's every play. some Caps fans that I've been reading a lot of discourse, not just from Capitals fans, but also from the media at large, that discourse is insane. They're acting like Matt Rempe is doing what Tom Wilson's doing, of just running at people and cutting their heads off. It's like, no, bro. Like, listen, some of the hits that Matt Rempe has lashed out, whether it be the late interference or what have you, I'm not defending those. Hey, Matt Rempe, don't do that. Like, that's not a smart play. At the same time, you can't turn around and cry about Matt Rempe when Tom Wilson is doing immensely worse things, not just in this series, but throughout his entire career. This is who he is, but you're complaining about Matt Rempe? Give me a break, dude. Give me a break.
Tribalism is undefeated. You're never going to be able to get a consensus amongst either side about this. We've been pretty adamant that as long as Rempe is not negatively impacting the hockey, by all means, he can stay in the lineup because he's been a relatively impactful player. He deserves to stay in. But as soon as a better player becomes available, in this case, it might be Hedel, by all means, that's a worthy decision. But opening up the conversation wider now, we've moved on past the mainstream talking points about this series. I find it hilarious that so much oxygen is dedicated to a guy who played less than 30 minutes in the entire series. But I digress. This series entirely defined on special teams. The Rangers at 5-on-5. They treaded water. They were fine. They were 45% or better in all of the key metrics, scoring chances, expected goals, high danger. They didn't play amazing at 5-on-5, but they didn't need to. Their power play was enough, and the one game where they didn't score on the power play, that was their best game at 5-on-5. That was game one. They did a thorough job in game number one of really controlling the flow of the game, waiting for Washington to start making mistakes, and then they picked them apart. And then from there, it got going. They went 6 for 16 on the power play, and more importantly, they went 15 for 17 on the kill. Their penalty kill in this series
really good.
Swung them opportunities. We talk about a lot. How can you find momentum in a game? How can
especially
you
in
control?
Game 3?
Yeah, the penalty kill in Game 3 was invaluable.
6 for 6 on the penalty kill. That was incredible.
That is the type of... You need at least one of your units humming. The Rangers having both is invaluable. I was talking about it with you before we started recording, and I had tweeted the graphic earlier about the special teams goal disparity. You might have only outscored them 7-5 at 5-on-5, but 8-2 on special teams is going to get it done every time. And that is where we can talk about talent disparity, because the other series with the largest gap, the second largest gap, the larger gap in special teams is Edmonton, LA, which is the exact same boat where the star players on Edmonton have been lights out on 5-on-5 on the power play. And in the Rangers case, it was the same deal. You saw the difference in high level talent between these two teams on special teams. Your special teams need to convert in the postseason. Yes, the game is mostly a 5-on-5. In this series, I wrote it down. Hang on. I actually went and did the math. In this series, 77% of the ice time was 5-on-5, 11% power play, 13% penalty kill. That's the Rangers' perspective on power play penalty kill. So with that in mind, you dominated 25% of the game. Outright dominated. Yep. Then you won the goaltending edge too. You take those two right there, that's 40% of the game right there. So you don't need to be great at 5-on-5. And I think the 5-on-5 numbers don't do a great job of totally telling the story in this series, because Washington was playing from behind so much that the Rangers were a lot more comfortable with allowing Washington to settle for bad chances, not taking risks offensively to try and create more chances that may bite them down the road as far as habit establishment. But for the purposes of this series, talking about this series in specific, the Rangers did a great job of taking the game as it came to them. When there were opportunities, like last night, that turnover to set up the Kakko goal, that's AHL level stuff right there.
Oh, yeah.
Where you just blind pass it to the middle, nobody in particular, not looking where the pass is going. You get up 1-0 like that from your third line, which we'll talk about the third line. I felt they were the best line 5-on-5. The 5-on-5 numbers bear that out too, but eye test wise, that's what a checking line looks like. They shut it down. You are not doing shit against them offensively, and they are going to cycle you into a pulp. The fact that they've got Cooley, Kakko, Wenberg going that well, and I know they only scored one goal at 5-on-5 in the series. They didn't concede a goal though. That's a big That's a big difference as well. And one last note on the special teams before I throw it back to you. You saw it. Ovechkin didn't have nothing for them. Nobody on that Washington power play had a thing for them. John Carlson, I thought, had a decent series. I thought Dylan Strome had individual moments, but nobody on that Washington team was making anything, even on the power play, where you would think a power play, even as good as the Rangers penalty kill is and as good as Shesterkin is, you would think a power play that features Carlson and Ovechkin would be able to manufacture something. But the Rangers did such a good job of holding Washington to bad chances on the power play that they had no chance. Washington's only path to winning this series was to get all of these games 3-2, 2-1, really low scoring. You go and look at the disparity, 15-7, the goal differential for the entire series, tells you all you need to know. Washington wasn't close once.
One more thing on the Matt Rempe discourse. He has more goals in the series than Ovechkin had points. That's points are not the telltale all of everything. Right. I mean, listen, it's just funny to say out loud. Like I'm not making a point or anything. I'm not suggesting that Matt Rempe greater than Alex Ovechkin. That's not what I'm saying here. But it is a testament to how well the Rangers essentially shut down Ovi. Now I understand. He's 38 years old. He doesn't have the foot speed he once did. He's older. Like that's just the fact of the matter. That the Ovechkin that they faced in this series was not the Ovechkin that has tormented the NHL for 20 years. This is not the same player. At the same time, though, despite that, the fact that Ovechkin was held out a point for the first time in his playoff career is still something that is very impressive. Whether he's 38 or not, he's still by far the most dangerous player on the ice for Washington. And the Rangers completely shut him down. It is very, very impressive that they were able to do that. Despite him, he said he was healthy and all these things, but he's 38. He's not the player that he once was. Despite all of that, the Rangers still were able to shut down the best player on the opposing team. And after they did that...
Ovechkin's not the best player on the Capitals, by the way. I know we had this discussion last week. He's not. At this point, I would be more inclined to argue John Carlson, hell, Charlie Lindgren's regular season.
List, well, in terms of... Let's say forwards. Let's say forwards at this point.
I'd probably take Dylan Strome over this version of Ovechkin purely because of his impact in transition, because Ovechkin's a passenger at this point. He needs people to make space for him. He needs people to carry the puck for him. I think if you dropped Ovechkin on a team, and I said this to somebody the other day, and I'll repeat it now, if the Capitals had a real first line and slid everybody down, then I think they could have had a chance against the Rangers in this series. If they had a bona fide star, if they had a David Pastrnak on their first line and then Ovechkin on their second line, then I think they could have hung. But this Washington, Ovechkin is an empty goal scorer at this point. He does not manufacture his own offense, and he is environmentally dependent. I think if Washington... Go ahead. No, I was going to say, if Washington wants to facilitate him getting to this goal record, they need to go for broke and go get him a real first-line center where all Ovi has to do is cherry pick at this point, because you're not winning with that group. That group has a lot of nice supporting pieces. Like I just said, if you go through that lineup and look one by one, there's a lot of nice pieces there. I like Connor McMichael. I like what I saw from LaPierre in this series. I liked what I saw from Protas in this series. I liked what I have long been a Dylan Strome guy. I like Rasmus Sandin. Charlie Lindgren had a great season. But these are all supporting pieces. Ovechkin at this point is a supporting piece. I don't think the Capitals... I think the Rangers playing Washington is so well is going to make the discourse about Ovechkin not scoring, when I think in reality the discourse is Ovechkin's been an inefficient goal scorer the last year or two, and the reality of his inability to make plays outside of structure anymore because he's just not as dynamic because he's old is really being lost. I think we're reducing this to he didn't score, he's not good anymore. His game has changed. He is not nearly as mobile. Sure. He's not as impactful. And that's why he didn't score. It's not because he's not good anymore. It's because his style of play has changed. The Rangers were able to entirely defang him. Not a threat in this series at all. In all honesty, when Washington was on the power play, I was more weary of the John Carlson slap shot than I was Ovechkin's, because the Rangers did such a good job of taking Ovechkin's shot away. And I think this is something we're really bad about, media at large, that we focus on the team that loses too much as opposed to giving credit. I think the Rangers penalty kill is the story of this series, not Ovechkin being able to not score, at least to me.
No, listen, I'm not disagreeing with you. It's what it. You can have your cake and eat it too kind of situation where the Rangers penalty kill was fantastic, especially in Game 3. I mean, the Caps had 6 chances to do something. That could have been the door opening them back into the series. Oh, okay. Well, let's say they scored 2 goals on the power play in Game 3, and then they win Game 3. Okay, well, now they have momentum going into Game 4. Let's say that ridiculous giveaway to Kaapo Kakko doesn't happen, and the Caps keep pressure, and they keep it going, and who knows, and anything could happen in Game 4, and et cetera, et cetera. The power play for the Caps was non-existent because of the Rangers' dominance on the penalty kill. The Caps had not a whole lot for a lot of that. Whether it be the cross-ice pass, there was a couple of opportunities, especially in Game 4, where maybe Protas got open or somebody got open for the back door, and the puck just never was close to that open player because the pass had to be perfect beyond perfection because the sticks were in the right places, because the pressure was there. And the Caps players were so uncomfortable getting around the Rangers' defensive structure in their own zone that they couldn't do anything about it. And that is a massive plus for the way the Rangers have played in this series. You take a look at their 5-on-5 play. It wasn't incredible. Game 1 was, for the most part, as we talked about, pretty close to incredible. Game 2, 3, and 4, it was okay. But it wasn't anything to it wasn't the highlight of the series is them playing at 5-on-5. And despite that, the Caps really did everything. They threw the kitchen sink at the Rangers. They tried everything. And despite the Rangers not looking 100% in games 2 through 4, they shut them down anyway. Not only did they shut them down, the Caps led, as you said, for a total of 2.5 minutes in 4 games. Despite the Rangers not looking otherworldly against a team that really shouldn't have been there in the first place because they didn't need to be. The Rangers essentially, this is dumbing it down a little bit, but like the Rangers were essentially playing at 80%, the Caps are playing at 100%, and the Rangers absolutely dominated the Capitals anyway. That is a really good sign for this team moving forward, and I would think, now again, who knows, it's the playoffs, I would think Carolina wins at some point in this series, and we'll play the Rangers in round 2. Unless there's an absolute miracle for the 5th time in NHL history, the Islanders could win a series down 3-0. Maybe. I'm not saying that that's not going to happen. I'm saying you might want to buy a lottery ticket if that does hit. So, by all accounts, it should be Rangers and Hurricanes in round 2, and I think the Rangers match up well against them as well. Overall, I like what I see from this team. The top 6, they didn't have a great game in Game 4, but Panarin, couple of goals. Mika Zibanejad hasn't he's been shooting the puck, but his passing has been really good. The outlet pass to Kreider for the goal, I think it was in Game 2, I want to say it was, or yeah. Like, his passing has been otherworldly in this series. We'll have to see how that translates to an actually good team against, I would imagine, Carolina. But overall, this has all of the makings of a deep run. You take care of a team that shouldn't be there. You didn't drag it to 6. You didn't drag it to 7. You didn't even drag it to 5. You took care of a bad team in 4. The first sweep of the Rangers have had since 2007 against Atlanta. This is exactly how you're supposed to start a long run. The more miles you put on these guys, the more tired they're going to get come the conference final, come the Stanley Cup final. The fact that they can essentially go back home, kick their feet up for a little bit and watch the Hurricanes and the Islanders kill each other out there in Game 5 is great, is a big advantage. I understand that the argument is, well, they're going to be rusty because the Hurricanes are going to be playing games and Rangers aren't going to be playing. I don't care. I
fundamentally disagree, especially against a team like Carolina that is purely tempo and energy. I think the Rangers, if Carolina has to play 6 or 7 games, I think 4 or 5 days of layoff will definitely hurt them, because Carolina is a tempo and energy team where they need to get into that routine and rhythm of every other day, because it comes down to energy and conditioning for them. Whereas the Rangers, I think if they have a 4, 5, 6, 7 day layoff, I think that first game is going to be a rough first period trying to get their legs back under them. And it's purely because it's not necessary. If they were playing somebody else, I might have a different opinion. If they were playing Boston or Toronto, I would have a different opinion. But being that it's Carolina in particular, who has historically and, since Brindamore's taken over, made them an energy style team, I think a slow start would hurt. But that said, before we start talking about the future, but as far as making sense of this and opening it up a little bit more, in terms of the third line, which I wanted to highlight, Cooley, Wennberg, Kakko, 30 minutes time on ice, 59% of the scoring chances, 100% of the goals for, only 1-0, but still 67% of the expected goals, 57% of high danger. The only line of the Rangers' 4 lines to be over 50% in the key metrics during the course of this series. But as we've discussed, because Washington is playing from behind a lot more, the Rangers are a little more content to play defense, to let Shesterkin be their best player, because when you have a lead, you have that luxury. When you build your team around your goaltender, you can make that work. The one thing I did find interesting when I was going through the numbers earlier today was Schneider and Gustafsson and Trouba were a lot better than what Trouba and Miller had been. But Schneider and Miller's underlyings were not great. And that leads me to believe that what we had talked about going into the series is true, that they don't really have the right complement for Miller without breaking up Fox Lindgren, and I don't think they want to do that. So I think that second pair is going to really be volatile. That's not to say you can't have the good end of that, where you make explosive plays, because Miller and Schneider are both capable of making them happen. I do think it's a concern that their supposed matchup shutdown pair doesn't have great underlyings. And the main reason is they really had a hard time breaking out. I know the Rangers did a great job at large of controlling play in this series, but as Game 3 and as Game 4 wore along, the Capitals were in the Rangers' end a lot. And some of that was just Washington making plays, nothing you can do in that case. And then the Rangers doing what they hadn't done. Last year, I spent the entire regular season hammering they sucked in transition. They did nothing to help their defensemen. Their defensemen were in their own zone 45 seconds, a minute and a half at a time for almost the whole season. That was a real issue, and the Devils cycled them into oblivion over the course of a series. Against Washington, it wasn't as much of an issue because Washington didn't have the capabilities to pounce on those mistakes. Against a team like Carolina or like the Islanders that forecheck extremely aggressively and try and manipulate space on the ice to a numbers advantage all of the time, I do think that's a cause for concern. And I would not be shocked if we end up seeing Trouba, Miller, and then Schneider, Gustafsson at some point later on in the playoffs, just because I think Schneider and Miller are going to have a tough time against the Hurricanes. But we'll get there once we know who they're playing. But I do think the Rangers 5-on-5 play in this series isn't really the story, because I don't want to say it was inconsequential, because it's the vast majority of play, but because of the way the games developed, I think you can take a lot of these numbers with a grain of salt. They are not indicative of what will happen against Carolina or the Islanders. Those are very different teams from Washington. But I do think to contextualize those numbers properly, to understand this series properly, it is helpful to use those numbers in relation to what you saw in the game.
Yeah, for sure. It's one of those situations where, you posted that graphic on the show Twitter earlier today, and 5-on-5 is a big part of the game. Sure, it's 80%, 85%, however much percentage you want to put in. But at the end of the day, it's not 100%. And the games can really alter based off those 10-15%. We've seen it in round one versus the Caps. We've seen it Edmonton versus LA. The 5-on-5 can be either close or even or what, in one of those situations. But then you get on the power play and you send McDavid and Draisaitl out there to do Draisaitl and McDavid things and Hyman things. And guess what? They will score all of the time, no matter what, essentially. So even though the power play is 2 minutes, 4 minutes, 6 minutes, over a 60-minute game, that it doesn't seem like it's a lot of time. But when you have these game changers out there with a lot of space and with a lot of confidence, because they are, whether it be Edmonton or the Rangers, their power play is two of the best in the entire world. That's really all you need. All you need is a slight window of opening, of opportunity to open for you, and that changes the whole course of the game. The Rangers in Game 4 didn't have an incredible 5-on-5 experience of a game. Yeah, I mean, that Kakko goal was great. That was not a whole lot of the Rangers doing. It was a whole lot of, hey, at Capitals, what you doing out there? Gave it to Kakko just for reasons unknown. But even though they didn't have the best 5-on-5 game at the end of the day, it doesn't matter, because their power play was so good that they came out there and they scored when they needed to, and then that was that. Trocheck scored, Panarin scored, and then Roslovic at the empty netter, and that was it. They did exactly what they needed to do at the exact right time, and they shut down a team that just did not have the legs or the talent to compete with the Rangers.
Rangers had 10 different players in this series score a goal. They had 14 different players record a point. The only three regulars to not record a point in this series, Cooley, Lindgren, and Schneider. When you're getting that kind of distribution, that's what you need. We talk about in the regular season, you need at least 10 of your regulars to hit 10 goals. You likely need at least 7 or 8 to hit 15, and then you probably need at least 6 to hit 20. You parse these out over an 82-game sample, you're going to be particularly encouraged. And this is the key to this Rangers group. It is going to be through their depth, because we know, and most teams around the league know, their high-end guys are great. Panarin is having the best season of his entire career.
Yep.
Zibanejad is having a really solid counting stats year. Whether or not how you feel about it depends. Trocheck's having one of the best years of his career. Kreider's
7 points in 4 playoff games, though. He's looked good.
Yeah, definitely. When you are talking about now, we're going to go and play Carolina in the next round. We're going to play Florida maybe in the conference final. That's where the Rangers' depth needs to be impactful the way it was in this series. And yes, some of the fact in this series is just that Washington's bottom 6 is unserious. Just matter-of-factly speaking, there's a reason Cooley, Kakko, Wenberg were able to dominate their minutes as much as they were. The Washington bottom 6 is not great. Now, as we move along and we're going to be playing a higher quality of opponent, you have to assume those power play numbers and those penalty kill numbers are going to regress slightly. I'm not saying the power play and the kill are going to go ice cold, but you're not going to score on 48% of the power plays the rest of the way. What were they?
Would be great if they did.
Where is it? They scored on 37% of the power plays. They killed off 88% of the kills. They've got plenty of leeway in their averages on both of those numbers, where if they come back down to earth on special teams, they have room to survive. But big picture, it's going to come down to their depth. We're going to talk a lot about matchups, who against who, what are you going to do deployment-wise to ensure favorable matchups. I think some teams have been better about this in the playoffs than others. The Bruins have done a really nice job of this, using last change when it's been to their benefit to put guys in a position to be successful. The Oilers have done a really nice job of this in their series against the Kings. Laviolette did a really nice job of this in the first round of sending out a second center, depending on which side of the ice they were on for a face-off, where if someone got thrown out, they would have the second center out there, still be on their strong side. I think you saw it in terms of the double shifting when it was time to double shift Wenberg or it was time to double shift Cooley. A lot of guys got extra opportunities because of the way they were using Rempe in this series. And I think that understanding of the depth and the fact that they have guys who can kind of move around and plug and play in a lot of different roles. And one last point on this before we move on and start talking about the playoffs at large. I think one component of this penalty kill conversation that I forget who brought it up. I forget if it was the national broadcast or the MSG broadcast. I forget. But the fact the Rangers have 3, arguably 4 centers the coach trusts to go out there on the penalty kill, that matters because it makes the shift shorter. When you can roll Zibanejad, Trocheck, Wenberg, Gaudreau, and then maybe, if you need to send 2 out at the same time, you still have 2 more centers. Because you have 4 centers you're comfortable with on your kill, you can keep your shift shorter and your guys out there fresher. And you saw how fresh they were because anytime Washington tried to gain the zone on the power play, they instantly got swarmed and were forced into a bad position, forced to make a play faster than they wanted to. And it's a real testament to this coaching staff having a good feel for the group and the fact that they have a reasonably diverse set of skills in a way they maybe haven't in years past.
Credit where credit is due, right? We've talked a lot about Zibanejad and his issues this season. 7 points in 4 games. He's had and again, all this with a grain of salt because the Capitals we're in the best team in the playoffs. Let's put it that way. But regardless, he looked really good. His passing was crisp. He had a really nice series. Jacob Trouba down to the third pair with Gustafsson played a lot better now that, he's not tasked to play second pair minutes with Miller, and that pair has historically just been abysmal for multiple head coaches. Now that he's not with Miller and in less, I guess, dangerous situations on down to the third pair with Gustafsson, he's been playing a lot better. Kudos to him as well. And also a whole lot of credit goes to the coaching staff. They really have they had Washington in knots. Like, it was not even close. The talent discrepancy and the special teams, that is all true as well. But Laviolette's adjustments before games and during games really made this series even easier than perhaps it would have been otherwise. That's one of the things that separates him from the previous regime of Gerard Gallant, where he had one plan, and if it didn't work, he would do the same thing and hope for different results. Laviolette has not only multiple different plans, but he's also good at adjusting on the fly, something that this team hasn't had in a long while. David Quinn wasn't good at it. Gallant wasn't good at it. Laviolette is. And way back in the summer, when we first heard that Laviolette was going to be the head coach, we didn't know what to expect because this man has been around for 100 years. We made a joke that he won the Stanley Cup in 240p back in 2006 and
on the Versus Network.
Yeah. We talked about how unsure we were about the direction of the coaching staff because this is somebody that's been around in the league for a long time. And you know what, though? So far, he's been great. It's about as great as you can hope for with a coach. Obviously, he's not batting 1,000. Nobody is going to bat 1,000, and no one is expecting anybody to bat 1,000. Like, that's just not how batting works, right? Like, everybody in the MLB wants to bat 1,000. Guess what? Nobody's batting 1,000, right? So, yeah, there's been bumps and hiccups along the road, but Peter Laviolette deserves a lot of credit for the way that he coached this series, and hopefully that continues moving forward.
Absolutely agreed with you there. I think something we hammered, and I can vividly picture this conversation unfolding when we did the episode on July 3rd, 4th, 1st, whatever the day free agency opened last year, where I was in my friend's backyard. And we ultimately said, whoever the Rangers bring in isn't going to matter that much because there wasn't anybody in free agency that was going to be particularly impactful. We said largely it didn't matter who the coach was because it was going to be on the guys here to play better than they have. Unquestionable, Panarin, Trocheck, Lafreniere playing better than they ever have. Trocheck might have had better counting stats the one year in Florida, but that wasn't on a good team. That was on a Panthers team that missed the playoffs. The best any of those guys have played. Kreider, pretty close to as best as he's played. Fox, pretty close. Lindgren, no. Trouba, no. Miller, debatable. They got enough differentiation from their group last year, from the guys who were already here. that it's hard not to attribute this to some type of, I don't want to call it a mental breakthrough, but like a realization, a realization that they are a really good team and that they haven't seized everything in front of them. And that's been the theme of this entire season. I tweeted it as soon as the game ended last night. They played like a C+ last night, and there was
Still
no doubt
won.
They were ever going to win that game. They played probably a B- for the series, and there was really never a doubt this series was going to go any other way. And yeah, some of that is Washington being bad, but I think there's a different attitude amongst this group where they understand the burden and the responsibility that comes with the expectations they've set for themselves. This isn't like last year where they dicked around for most of the regular season. It's not like 2 years ago where they were just kind of happy to be here and, oh, we upset Pittsburgh and, oh, look at this, we can upset Carolina. This group realizes the gravity of this situation and how serious of an opportunity is in front of them. They are going to go into round 2 more rested than their opponent, healthier than their opponent. Carolina's got a couple guys dinged up. Pesci hasn't played in that series, and they've got a couple other guys dealing with lingering injuries. The opportunity to do something is in front of them, and they cannot. I feel at least this group is not the type that's going to blow it the way a Rangers group in years past. And the way this series went, the fact that it was a sweep and as resounding of a sweep as it was, tells me the attitude about this group is different because they took the opportunity that was in front of them and they stomped it out. They did not give Washington any room. Of a Rangers team of years past, that series goes 5 or 6 games.
Yep.
You get 1 or 2 stupid fights from Trouba or Rempe against Wilson or McElrath that gives Washington air that they don't need. Or the Rangers piss away a lead late and it goes to overtime and you get the stupid net front scramble goal that kills you in overtime. They stomped out Washington and did not give them a chance in this series. That is a testament to the mental strength of this group and not something I was sure this group might have had, say, February or March of this year. That was about as convincing a message this team could have sent to all of us that we are ready for this moment and we are going to do what we can. We might run into a team that's better than us, but we will cross that bridge when we get to it. As far as us, we are doing everything we can, and we are not giving other teams opportunities.
The 180 of
mindset.
The mindset change has been nothing short of tremendous. And again, a lot of that goes back to the coaching staff, and this because the Rangers love taking shots at Gerard Gallant, which is something that doesn't happen in this sport. It happens more so in other sports. The NHL is very tightly lipped about things that they don't particularly like. But the Rangers in this situation love throwing shots at Gerard Gallant. Like Jimmy Vesey a few days ago was like, oh, we're a lot more prepared for this situation. Like we're a lot more this and that. It's like, I wonder who he could be talking about. Oh, gee. Oh, could he be talking about the head coach that got dumpster fired in the first round, and then was he yelling at management, was yelling at everybody, didn't have a plan B, didn't know what was going on, and got fired? Oh, I wonder if he's talking about that guy. Like, these things don't happen in the NHL, and yet the Rangers keep subtly doing it at Gerard Gallant, signifying that they were not prepared for the playoffs last season. I don't want to say because of him, but like, he didn't help. Gerard Gallant clearly did not help the team in the playoffs. So the fact that the Rangers went from that mindset last season and all the chaos and whatnot to from day one, Peter Laviolette came in and made these guys work extremely hard, changed the mindset from day one of training camp to now is, again, so impressive. And when we talk about changes on the team or in or coaching staff or front office, and we talk negatively about somebody, we do it from the perspective of, hopefully we're wrong, right? When Blake Wheeler was signed, Nick Bonino was signed, all these things, like, yeah, they're really slow and they're not great anymore, but maybe we're wrong and they're going to score 100 points and the Rangers just waltz to the cup, right? Like, obviously, we say things that are objective, but we want to be wrong when players and coaches want to prove us wrong. When Peter Laviolette was hired, we were of the mindset of, I don't know, this guy's been around, I don't know how much is going to help. He proved us wrong. And this is really good to see out of this head coach and out of this team. The mindset has completely done a 180. It's a lot of fun right now. Hopefully this continues moving forward.
I still think about how they did that. The Athletic did that feature where they talked to a bunch of coaches who had been fired over the last year and a half. And Gerard Gallant said, and I quote, "I don't believe the locker room turns against a coach. I just think that's something the media says to justify why you changed the coach," which puts a firm understanding of how good Gerard Gallant was at managing people. But enough about the Rangers taking care of business. We don't know when the second round is going to start because there's still quite a bit to be determined, also including when the Knicks advance to the second round, which might make
Game 5, baby, tomorrow night. Oh, I will be there and I cannot wait. Oh, I'm so excited.
The Knicks got fun. The Knicks are having the season right now that the Rangers did 2 years ago, in the perception that everyone's expectations are a little bit lower because Randall's hurt and the other teams may or may not have more individual talent. But the Knicks are fucking dogs, man.
Yes,
you look at the offensive rebound splits in that series. That's largely what swung these 4 games so far in this series, is that the Knicks have 4 guys crashing the boards every time a shot goes up in the fourth quarter. And that's what swung the series. The Rangers got some dogs in them. The Rangers should be loaning Rempe to the Knicks for Joel Embiid purposes only. Send him out there, double technicals within the first 5 minutes of the game. Perfect solution to this problem. But opening it up, talking about the other series.
You think about Rempe can hit a jump shot?
No shot. You ever see hockey guys shoot a basketball?
I mean, hey, people have hobbies. I don't know. Maybe he's secretly good at basketball. I have no idea.
Yeah, fair enough. But moving along, talking about other playoff series, we'll start Boston-Toronto. Toronto has had basically everything that could go wrong in this series go wrong for them, frankly. The goaltending, Samsonov, has not been great.
No.
Marner, very clearly not 100% coming back from whatever lower body thing was bothering him. He missed the entire month of March with. Nylander dealing with the really bad migraines that kept him out of the first 3 games. Matthews has not been able to make anything happen. But at large, the Bruins are doing exactly what we expected. Their goaltending and their defense have been great. Marchand has the most points of anyone in the playoffs other than McDavid. When you have a star player playing at that level, that is really great.
For the most part, my picks were relatively on the money. The Toronto Maple Leafs are really making me look like a clown show. I picked the Leafs in 6. I thought, okay, they were, Boston isn't good. Toronto has so much to prove. Like, there's so much riding on this playoff series for them, right? Like, I put faith in the Leafs. So, like, okay, which is very clownish in and of itself, because you can't ever put faith on the Leafs because this is what they do every single goddamn year in the playoffs. But I thought, okay, this has to be the year they beat Boston, right? Surely this is it. Like, their talent is better. Yeah, their goaltending is not terrific, to say the least. But Boston's depth isn't great. You can slow them down. Toronto for the most part throughout the entire year has been a pretty good team. I put all my eggs into Toronto, and guess what? They stink. And it's some of it is them stinking, but we talked about this before we hit record. Boston is playing the best hockey they've played all season. They are infuriating Toronto. They're not letting them have anything on the power play at 5-on-5. Like, they are just suffocating the offense, and Toronto has no answer. And Sheldon Keefe, after Game 4, saying, "Oh, it wasn't an effort thing when Mitch Marner was on the bench," and I forget who it was. It might have been Nylander who was saying, like, "Stop crying. This isn't juniors," directed at Marner. It's like, yo, I don't know what you're seeing, Sir Keefe, Mr. Keefe, if I may.
It's coach speak. He's got to try and be up there and be diplomatic and take the heat off of his guys.
I get it.
He knows he's probably getting fired.
But it sounds so ridiculous. I understand the coach speak, but there's got to be a better way of approaching that question, because it's so like there's only the coach speak goes well up to a certain point. When it is so objectively hilarious that it is abundantly clear to a child that it is just sweet nothings directed in the microphone, that's when you got to stop with the coach speak. Like there's a limit to where it works, and my man's went way past that limit and kept going. Brother, please, you got to find a different answer to that question.
He's trying to get us to talk about him as opposed to his players, which is why you go up there and make an ass of yourself. It is basically, that's your kitchen sink if you're a coach. It is your last resort to try and get the heat off of your guys to buy them enough time to get going.
He's done.
I think no matter what, because I don't think the Leafs are coming back from 3-1 down.
Yeah,
he's more likely than not done. Shanahan very well.
The question is who they hire.
Oh, there's a lot of retreads out there that I think would be jumping at the bit to take this job, whether it's Berube, Gallant, Woodcroft. You could argue, what's his face?
Seattle's coach just got fired.
I can't. Buddy,
Dave Haxtell.
Haxtell, yeah. I went to say Ron Hextall, but I corrected myself. Homophones, similar sounding last names, but yeah. There's a lot of compelling retreads out there that I think could maybe get a little bit more out of that group, but I think the flaws in the way that group's constructed, they're too much to overcome. I think there's no such thing as having too much talent on a team, but I don't think the Leafs' talent complements each other particularly well, and I don't think they've allocated enough resources throughout their lineup to protect their goalies, to reduce the workload on their defensemen, and they're more than fine as a regular season team, but we have seen the limits of this type of roster construction in the postseason, and they've done a decent enough job of separating their stars to have 2 or 3 lines where at least one star is on it, and it still hasn't been enough. That defense just isn't talented enough. I still can't believe Treliving traded for Lyubushkin like that was going to make a discernible difference on the defense, but enough shitting on the Leafs for now. There will be more than enough time for the rest of hockey media to take care of that. Florida, Tampa's just not deep enough. It's that simple. Tampa's played reasonably well in that series. They've done the best they can in a difficult series. They really probably should have won at least one of the 2 games in Florida that they lost, but this is how it lies. If anybody can make that a series, it's John Cooper in that group. I still think John Cooper's the best coach in this league. I think if I had a vote for Coach of the Year, I'd argue I would probably give it to him based on what he's done with that group. Other than that, we hit on the Hurricanes and the Islanders. We hit on those. Vegas, Dallas. If Dallas wins tonight, we're talking. But if Vegas wins tonight and it goes to 3-1, I think Dallas is the best team in the league talent-wise, but you're not coming back from 3-1 against Vegas if Logan Thompson's playing that good. It's just that simple. Then you talk Winnipeg, Colorado.
Winnipeg series is crazy.
Winnipeg doesn't have the guys. The defense isn't there.
No.
The defense is not there.
And not only that, Connor Hellebuyck is going to win the Vezina, and he has looked awful. And I understand that some of that has to do with the defense blowing multiple tires every game and just essentially hanging him out to dry. I understand all of that. At the same time, while that's happening, he also has not looked good. No. Like both of these things can be true.
Simultaneously true. He's got like an 880 something save percentage.
Not having a good series, which is one of the it's just such a hockey's a strange enigma in and of itself. Goaltending is the strangest enigma of them all. Connor Hellebuyck was a brick wall the entire regular season, and then he gets to Colorado and he looks miserably bad. How does that happen? Like that take that and just drag it out of context for a second and just think of that in an ethereal space of like, this guy has been so good for 8 months, and then he goes into the playoffs and has the worst 4 games he's played in years. How does that happen? That doesn't make any sense.
Hey, you want to talk about goaltending? Go look at the other series out west. Nashville, Vancouver. Nashville was a minute away from being 2-2 going back to Vancouver.
Yep, they blew
and
that
genuinely
so bad.
having a chance of pulling off the upset. If that empty net shot goes in, we are talking about Nashville pulling off this upset and like in convincing fashion. Nashville's played really well in that series. Vancouver's special teams have not been great. Their power play hasn't been great. Their penalty kill has been pretty good. You're down to your third goalie now. You don't know if Casey DeSmith is going to be able to come back. Anytime you're down to your third
Demko probably
he's not
out for the playoffs.
He's not coming back, at least not this round.
Yeah.
Maybe if they go another 2 rounds, we could have that conversation. But from what I understand and what I've read, he's not coming back in the slightest. You look, more than one great team's been undone. You look at the Colorado teams before they broke through, where they were down to a third or a fourth goalie in the playoffs more than once. And the talent drop off from NHL starter to third goalie is another planet. That's like from playing football in the backyard to walking onto an NFL field effectively. I know that's kind of shitting on the AHL, but effectively that's the level of disparity. If Philip Forsberg was in the AHL, he would put up Wayne Gretzky numbers. That's the way I think about it, where if you put someone that good in that league, they would put up 150, 160 points. But last series to touch on, Edmonton, LA, same exact kind of boat as the Washington series, where the special teams disparity, Edmonton is 10-0. They've scored 10 power play goals. They haven't conceded 1 penalty kill. And Skinner finally gave them a good game. You get that, you're in the mix. I think we're starting to see, and I think this playoffs at large, we were going into yesterday with 5 teams on the brink of elimination, depending on what happened. I think this playoffs in particular has been a real illustration of what we've talked about a lot, that the NHL doesn't have parity, that it has a lot of mediocre teams that beat up on each other and then a couple teams that rise above the rest of them. Because you're looking at the disparities in some of these series, man. Like Winnipeg was incredible in the regular season and they're getting body bagged. And Colorado's good. Don't get me wrong. Are they really this much better than Winnipeg?
No.
That's really the question. Same thing. You look at some of these others, like Carolina and the Islanders. Yeah, that's a real talent disparity. Carolina is a lot better than them. The Rangers and Washington, Rangers are a lot better than them. Tampa and Florida is a lot better than them. The talent gaps in the NHL, I would argue, are only getting bigger. I would argue the difference between great teams and average teams is only increasing by the season. And the way these playoffs have unfolded is a perfect encapsulation of that.
Yes and no, but you can always go back to LA in 2012 coming in at the last possible day of the playoffs. And I think that was the year that they were down 3-0 against the Sharks, right? And then they came back all the way to win the cup, or was that 2014? I can't remember.
2014, where the Kings were down 3-0.
Yeah, I mean, these things will happen in hockey more often than they will in other sports. But just because hockey is more luck based than other sports doesn't mean that the skill disparity can be overshadowed by luck if the skill disparity is big enough. Like, the Caps could have gotten a lucky bounce or two against Shesterkin and the Rangers in that first round series, but it wouldn't have changed the outcome of the series because of how large the discrepancy is between the Caps ceiling versus the Rangers ceiling. It's just it's not even in the same planetary solar system. Like, it's not even close. So yeah, I don't know if the gaps are getting bigger because, again, outside of that really ridiculous run that Nashville went on where they won, what was it, like 15 games in a row, 16 games in a row, something like that, they have not been a really great team.
Disagree. Nashville's had a really good 5-on-5 season. You look at that third line, you look at that first line. Forsberg put up 48 goals. Ryan O'Reilly had his most points in 4 years.
I'm not saying they've been bad. That's not what I'm saying. That's not what I'm saying here. But they are giving Vancouver all that they can muster, and even then, they really they blew Game 4 so egregiously hard. To have a 2-goal lead, to have a shot at the empty net, it reminded me of I think it was the women's Cup gold medal game a few years ago where Team USA had the lead. They hit the post on an empty netter, and then Canada scored, and then they won in overtime and they won the gold medal. Like that is just ultimate heartbreaker level kind of material. You can't really script that kind of stuff. It's the stuff that the NHL playoffs are made of. And for Vancouver, I don't know what their future looks like when
they're in good shape.
They are, like they're, most of their team is still relatively fine, but when I would feel a lot more confident. I was a Canuck. Obviously, I'm not breaking any news here. I would feel a lot more confident if I had Demko and Net than Arthur Silovs. But how far can Arthur Silovs take this Canucks roster? Now, again, we've seen in many recent examples where you don't need the best goaltending to win. You just need a goaltender to win. As you know, we've seen this in recent history where the team with the best goalie sometimes doesn't win the Stanley Cup. So maybe Silovs can take the Canucks to a long run here. Who knows? But so far, he's done exactly what they needed him to do. DeSmith had a good game 3, and for Vancouver, I don't know what their future looks like, but it's not too bad.
No, I would agree with that respect, but let's wrap up here, get out of here. Plenty to do during the hockey playoffs. I actually want to go sit down and actually watch some hockey. Make sure you are subscribed wherever you get your podcast, available on all the major podcasting platforms. Leave the show a nice 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. If you are watching over on YouTube, yes, those are our faces. Hit the subscribe button. Hit the little alarm bell to get a notification whenever the stream goes live or if a short drops. Leave a comment. Which playoff series are you most surprised with, how it's going? Andrew and I will talk to you guys next week. Until then, let's go Rangers.
Later.